That Metal Interview.
Our guest for today will be none other than Death Angel's bassist extraordinaire, Damien Sisson. Of course, Death Angel hails from the Bay Area thrash metal scene since the 80s, late 80s, I believe. And this guy joined around 10 years ago. Damien spent some time talking to us about life on the road and different stories, studio experiences with these thrash metal legends of Death Angel. I'll stop talking and we'll let you guys listen to our interview with our special guest, Damien of Death Angel. It's been a little over 10 years since you joined Death Angel, right? How has the ride been so far?
Playing with Death Angel, how's the ride been? I mean, there's no really way to break it down other than to say if you like music and you like to perform, it's just about one of the best situations you could jump into. You kind of skip a lot of the van touring, you skip a lot of the lugging your own gear and having to do your own merch, and you're into a band that's been established for, I think by the time I joined, it was almost 25 years. So if you're in a position like me, if you're an aspiring musician, I don't really see what more you could ask for except for maybe joining something like Black Sabbath or Iron Maiden. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah. So when I joined, I was just pretty much a local musician, performing with just about anybody I could. My philosophy was that if I said yes to everything and to anyone, one way or another, it'd open up doors and create opportunities. So having joined Death Angel, it was an amazing opportunity because I'm joining a band that's already been established for 25 years. And I think when you talk to newer bands these days and you ask them what's it like trying to start a band, I mean, unless you're self-financed and or a social media expert, it's extremely difficult these days. I mean, I really have to give what's that?
Yeah, I agree.
You're right.
Yeah.
Right. I took my heart out to some of these guys. We just did a tour. I got to give props to Ex Mortis and Hellfire, who, they're out here, they're lugging their own gear, they're setting up their own merch, they're driving themselves in vans. And, I can't say what the finances look like because I'm not really involved in that, but they're working very, very damn hard. And it's not like this isn't the 80s where we have label support that's giving us huge amounts of money to go out and support albums. So these guys are really doing it for the love. So joining Death Angel, a band that's already been around for 25 years, it's a little bit like kind of, going from the first level and skipping right up to, the top of the penthouse, more or less. I mean, don't have to lug my own gear, don't have to worry about driving or routing. We have a bus, we have a place to sleep every night, we have a merch person, I have a technician. So a thing from, my perspective, it's a little bit of a dream situation in which that, I get to I was able to bypass a lot of the really, really difficult work. Not that I didn't work at a local level, but touring is a whole nother level too.
How did it feel when you first shared the stage with legends like KREATOR, METALLICA, Exodus? How did that feel?
I don't think there's any other way to put it, but you're somewhat in awe that you're there. For people who aren't familiar, I'm about 13 years younger than Rob and Mark, who are the founders of the band, and so that puts me at about 12 to 15 years younger than a lot of these people. And whereas I didn't really grow up in the heavy metal scene too much. I mean, I like my Iron Maidens, I like my Judas Priest, I like my Black Sabbath, I like my Metallica.
Oh, yeah.
But as far as this whole huger scene with these creators and other guys, like, these are names I heard, but they were so distant from what I was doing and distant from what I grew up with that, I mean, they almost might as well have been playing on Jupiter or Saturn to me. And so all of a sudden playing with these people and seeing my network and my circle shrink up like that, it's maybe larger than life's not quite the right word, but it was a bit surreal at first, where all these bands I only read about in magazines or heard about on a website bulletin board, all of a sudden now I was doing tours with them. So it has been surreal in that way.
Here's a touchy subject, the coronavirus, of course. You guys just did a European tour. I read about the Testament guys and the crew and all that, and of course, your bandmate Will, who's in the hospital, right?
Yeah.
I hope you guys are doing okay and pulled through, man. Wow.
If there's one thing that I have seen from what's going on is metal has always had a very, very strong community, and I think that's one of the most beautiful and amazing aspects of the heavy metal scene is that the community is really what has supported and kept the fuel and the engine of heavy metal running. So when the situation comes out about the coronavirus, the COVID-19 virus, you start to kind of see some of what made the metal community so amazing, which is people pulling together. You're starting to see that extend beyond just the metal community, where the metal community is beautiful, but we're starting to realize that something like this is even bigger than our community and our scene. You're seeing it's bringing out the best and the worst of people. You see some people who are really stepping up to the plate, being good role models, encouraging the right values at this time. And then you see some people who are kind of outliers who still aren't taking it serious, and that's why I say it brings out the best and the worst. Some people are really stepping up and doing their part, and I think a lot of us are agreeing on that. And then you just see a few minority of people who I don't think they understand that, sure, 99% of the people may survive, but it's a virus that affects 2.3 people, so every one person is going to affect another 2 people versus the flu, which is another person. So all of a sudden you go from maybe 1,000 people getting sick to 2,000, 2,000 to 4,000, 4,000, 8,000. So when it starts to get exponential like that, sure, 99% of the people are going to survive, but the overall numbers is higher, which is going to bring the statistical likelihood that people just in general's mortality rate is going to go up. So, it's easy to feel like it doesn't apply to you, but when you look at the long view picture, it does apply to everybody right now.
Yeah, it makes sense, yeah. Talk to us about that. I read about that ferry ride, that stormy ferry ride in Europe.
Right. That was a pretty dramatic and exciting start to the tour. Basically what happened was a storm was coming in, and the ferry that we were on is like a 14-hour ferry ride, which is almost borderline like a cruise, except for that you're on pretty choppy water. So we were the last ferry that disembarked before they cut off ferry services. And, at first we didn't really, it seemed like a normal ride for us, more or less. We have cabins, there's a bar, there's karaoke, so we're enjoying ourselves. And then at some point, it started to get a little more choppier, and it started to get a little bit more rough, and it started to get a little bit more exciting.
Wow.
And, some of us, I think for when you're on a ride that is, that torrential, people are going to get seasick. I mean, people get seasick even when there's completely smooth water. So, unfortunately, I think a little bit of all 3 groups and crews experienced some of the seasickness. But I heard a report that Testament's gear truck had gone overboard, and I think that was a misunderstanding because the Testament's gear truck was on the ferry after us, which got cut. So when the reports came in that their gear didn't make it, it's not that it fell overboard. It was simply that the gear was on another ferry that was unable to cross. So
okay.
I know, it was kind of funny. I think everybody had a pretty good chuckle about how I'm not sure which website ran with it, but seemed to kind of do the classic jump to conclusions on that one. But no, Testament didn't lose their gear; they just didn't have their gear for a day. And I gotta say, the lemonade from Lemons about that was Exodus and Death Angel pulled together to give them some gear, some guitars, some drums. And for anybody who was there that day, they got to see a pretty classic, awesome, old school Testament show. There was no props, there was no lights, there was no smoke. You just got to see them go and do what they did. And in a certain way, it was a really big highlight of the tour because you don't get to see that anymore. When you see Testament, you got a huge production, and you got the smoke and mirrors and everything, and you got to see them go back to the truly old school. So it's kind of a special treat for those who were there in attendance.
What a treat, huh? Wow.
Yeah, totally.
For fans that don't know, talk to us about Potential Threat.
Oh, Potential Threat. Okay, well, interesting enough, Potential Threat is not as well known as many of the second tier thrash metal bands, but the Noble Brothers, who are the 2 main guys, Kenny and Mike being the guitar player singer and Kenny being the drummer, Potential Threat has been around since about 85, 86, or 87. They just, at that time, they didn't get picked up with the label, but from what I understand, of course, this was even before my time, but from what I understand, they got to open up a lot of shows They got to open up, I believe, even for Slayer at that time. So they were all up in the mix. I mean, they're from that generation. And at one point, the Noble Brothers had gone to Germany and I think pursued some other options there, and then they came back. And shortly after I had started playing with Scarecrow with Matt Harvey and Will Carroll, I got in contact. The guys from Potential Threat, Mike and Kenny, got a hold of me. And, there's no other way to put it, man. These are two of the most genuine, sincere, and likable guys that I've ever met in all of the music industry, not even just the heavy metal, of all. They're really genuine and sincere. And so having met them and hang out with them, and, catching that vibe, I wanted to hang out with them more. I wanted to do more. So when they asked me to join, it was kind of a no-brainer just because, sometimes you do some things for money, some things you do for exposure, but sometimes you just do stuff because you genuinely enjoy it. And that's what both Kenny and Mike brought to what they bring to the scene is just a genuine love and a genuine passion. So since I've joined, we've recorded 3 albums together. We released an album last year, just about a month before the Death Angel Humanicide album dropped. And we are now on Ragnarok Records, but unfortunately, it's not a huge record label. There's not a lot of promotion. There's not a lot of social media out there and awareness. So it's kind of, the band is more a little bit for just those people who are kind of on the in.
Yeah.
But I would say that if you like thrash metal, if you like new wave of British heavy metal, if you like old school Metallica, I mean, it's pretty much satisfying those key points right there.
Oh, wow. Nice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was my next question. You mentioned the name Scarecrow. My next question is Scarecrow still active, or is it in the past, or what's going on there?
I was talking to Will with that on this tour, and him and Matt Harvey are big metalheads, so they converse a little bit more and talk about upcoming releases. And the secondhand news I heard is that it's still on the radar. Matt Harvey still wants to make it happen, and I know that we all had Bud, Will, Matt, and we all had a great time playing together, and I think we all loved the music that Matt was writing. So I'm not going to say the door is closed. We're hoping that there is still a window of opportunity, and we would all really, if we can make it happen, if we can pull together and pull our schedules, together, I think we would love to make an album happen, or an EP, or release something, because we had a lot of fun, and I think the music, it speaks for itself as far as having that heavy metal, thrash metal integrity.
Nice. One more band project. How about From Hell? Is that active?
From Hell is active. So when George Ederson, who is pretty much the main songwriter of From Hell, him and I go way back in that one of my first drummers of one of my first bands and him are friends. So before I really knew anybody in the metal scene, George was a buddy who I'd known, and he's another really genuine guy who's just got like really deep passion for heavy metal, and he'll never give up. He'll keep doing it. It's in his blood, it's in his bones, and he loves doing it. So when he put the From Hell project together, he asked me if I'd be willing to record bass, and being that he's been a buddy for so long, and he's always been so positive and supportive, it was a no-brainer. I said, of course I'll come out and do that.
Yeah.
They released the first album, and it's been so busy, and this is as amazing as being a Death Angel has been. One of the drawbacks is that I've had to unfortunately close the doors, and some distance has been created with so many bands and friends over the years, just because of the amount of touring we're doing. And so with From Hell, what ultimately ended up happening is, yes, I was getting too busy and it was getting too difficult to commit. So I got a really good friend of mine who's another phenomenal bass player and a hell of a gentleman, Steven. Give me just a moment, I know his last name. Stephen Goodwin, who's another fellow I've known since I first started playing in the scene. So I recommended him, and I think it's been going really well. And to be all fair, Steven's got a much better attitude about touring and grunting than I do.
Oh, really?
He'll load his gear. He loads his gear, and he helps out with sound, and he helps out with all those little extra bits where I was just like, well, I'm just gonna show up and play bass. Steve has definitely got much more of a team player attitude. So I'm glad to see see that they're fitting together and they're locking in really well.
Awesome. So, who are your influences? Who do you coin as your musical influences?
Oh man, they do go a little bit all around. I'm gonna probably just narrow this in to bass players since I'm a bass player, but it certainly isn't limited to bass players who've influenced me. But you got to start off at the top with the Geezer Butler. You know, I mean,
of course.
I was talking to Steve DiGiorgio, and you know, it's like how many times and how many different bass players have ripped off his like licks and his songwriting and his bits. I mean,
right.
I think every bass player is using a little bit of Geezer somewhere if you play hard rock or metal.
Everyone.
And then, right, I mean, we go back to those albums, he also has a Dream bass mix, right?
Oh,
I mean, the
wow.
bass is so loud in Black Sabbath, it's amazing.
Complete, he's a pioneer for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And he just seems like he seems like the original. You know, when I read books about him, I read interviews. He's like the first vegetarian that I could think of. He's, you know, he was into fashion and all this stuff. He was into these really enigmatic lyrics. So I mean, when you get all four of the guys in Black Sabbath, you're looking at true originals. You know, I mean, they might have been influenced by some Zeppelin, or they might have been influenced by some other type of bands. But as far as personalities and what they're doing, you're looking at true originals and pioneers.
For sure.
I'd have to say that when I started taking bass lessons, my bass teacher introduced me to Iron Maiden, and there's no doubt about it's another guy, Steve Harris. I mean, how many times have I taken his lick and disguised it in my original music?
Yeah.
Countless times, you know. So Steve Harris is a huge influence. One guy that sometimes kind of surprises people, but definitely helped take music in another direction would have to be Billy Gould from Faith No More.
Oh yeah.
And the reason I put Billy Gould in there is because when I first started playing music, I had no interest whatsoever in slap bass guitar. But I loved Faith No More, and as I started to learn some of the bass lines, I see that not only was Billy Gould doing some slap and pop bass, but he also just had a phenomenal sound. Like when I listened to the King for a Day album, I mean, I don't know how else to put it, but that guy's got a godly tone, you know?
Yeah.
And so he influenced me as far as taking my bass playing in a different direction, but he also influenced me by having just a sound that it complements the music. It's not simply that it's audible, it's the type of sound and the smoothness of the sound. And so I'd have to put Billy Gould in there as well.
Oh, yeah.
And then being that Billy Gould was a slap bass player, that kind of got me interested in jazzy guys like Victor Wooten, Stanley Clarke, and Jaco Pastorius. Jaco never ever slapped, but all three of those guys were introduced a world of virtuosity that I'd never known on bass before. And in particular, Victor Wooten, who has such a technical showmanship, but somehow still balances out and makes it really musical and very melodic. And I've always been attracted to melody. It's always been a big part of that I've liked in music. And so I'd have to put Victor Wooten as a pretty big influence in there as well. And then as I continue forth, I mean, the first arena concert I ever saw was Rush, and it was on the Tesseract tour.
There you go.
And I'll be damned if I didn't spend maybe 2 years of my life trying to learn as many Rush songs as I possibly could.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Geddy Lee is definitely got it up there. And I'd have to throw Roger Glover from Deep Purple. And I think for some people, that's another kind of odd one, but the guy is just so incredibly rock solid and tight. He's so tight with Ian Pace, and he plays such a foundation in Deep Purple that I got to throw that guy in there. And then, lastly, I can't ignore Cliff Burton. Someone like that who's, he's another pioneer. He's another original, and he's a guy who, it's incredible how he had that ability to have his own voice at such a young age. I mean, someone who's developed his technique, his sound, his individual voice at such a young age. I mean, if you've played bass, I don't see how you can't be inspired by that.
Yeah, he was real young, huh? That's true. He died in his 20s, huh?
I think he was like 24, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. I believe it's 24. Yeah, he's not the 27 club. I think he was even younger. It's just incredible that someone has such a distinct style at such a young age. I mean, it's really a rarity.
Wow.
Yeah.
All great choices, all great badass bass players.
Right on.
I play some bass, a little bit of bass guitar too, so those are all badass choices.
Right on, man.
Walk us through the recording process of a Death Angel record. Do you guys what goes on first, or what's the process like?
Okay, well, I'll talk. I think the band has always kind of been organically growing since Will and I have joined, and it's taken kind of its own life. But I'll maybe more highlight the last recording process, which I think in some ways this last album has been one of the more fulfilling ones in that what we came back at us and what it's achieved as far as feedback from people, the way we feel. I think we all feel very proud of the Humanicide album. And in the past, we would do rehearsals during writing sessions, and this last one, I think, Rob has a new confidence with his band, knowing that, we're all going to try to do the best to narrow in and focus on what really needs to be there. So Rob starts working on some riffs. He may or may not put in some drum tracks, but as soon as he thinks he has a song, he gets together with Will and starts fleshing out the drums. Once he's fleshed out the drums on some songs, he'll do some pre-production demoing of Will's live drums. He'll reattach his rhythm guitars, and if he has any lead parts worked out, do that. And then from that, he's able to give Mark, Ted, and I some pre-production demos. So by the time I got the demos, it was pretty darn late in the process. I think I got the demos, and I had about 2 months before I was going to enter the studio, which for me is plenty of time, I think. And we chose to go this route in this way because sometimes when I'm there for the writing process, writing changes, and in my mind I start to get attached to bass lines I've written or the way the arrangement is. So this way, I'm hearing the songs with kind of some fresh ears. I got together with Rob twice, and he just showed me some basic riffs of the songs to save me some time. I went home, worked on it, came back, learned the second batch of songs with him with the riffs, and kind of went over any ideas, if he thought there was any parts that the bass needed to be highlighted or not, or if he had any suggestions. And so, it was probably about 3 hours of getting together with Rob, and then from there, I just take it. I tried to spend a little bit of time with it every day. I mean, if I could, just go through the songs once a day just to keep them fresh, just in case some ideas pop in my brain, that I don't forget them. And I worked with the demos for about a month and a half, and then we flew over to Jason Sukoff's studio in Orlando, Florida, the Audio Hammer. And once again, I think because of the confidence that Rob has with the band from the last 3 recordings, it was just me and Jason. So Mark wasn't there, Will wasn't there, Ted wasn't there, and Rob wasn't there. It was just me and Jason. We went through the day, went through all the songs. I felt like about 95% prepared and ready. I tried to be as well rehearsed as I could because I knew that Rob was giving me the freedom to not have to come to rehearsals, and I deliberately left a few things unfinished just so that Jason and I could have some interaction and some creativity in the studio, and I think it benefited. So I'm in there, and we knock out about 3 or 4 songs a day. I really do prefer to get big long takes and maybe just punch in parts that need a little bit of fixing or focusing in, but I really do try to capture a little bit of the dynamic of the vibe of, I wouldn't call it a live feel, but trying to get a long take rather than doing a piece and a piece and a piece and a piece. I like to kind of jam through, get a vibe and a groove going, and then go back and then touching up, whatever maybe wasn't quite in the pocket.
Well, for people that have never recorded or been in a recording session, I mean, that's a lot of work for a 5, 6, 8 minute song, or whatever.
Yeah.
That way, this is badass information for people that don't know the process of all the recordings, right?
Yeah, it does take a lot of rehearsal. It does take a lot of self-discipline. But I've said it 1,000 times. But I do have the easiest job in thrash metal. I mean, the amount of time that I put into the recording and the amount of time I came into preparing is, probably about maybe like 15% of what someone like Rob puts in, or something like Jason Sukoff puts in. And I think even Will had to probably put in more because he has to go down and do rehearsals and stuff. So it is a lot of work, but I'm pretty fortunate that I can trim off some of the hours and kind of get right down to the meat and potatoes of it.
Yeah, there you go.
But it does take, yes. I think anybody who's trying to make an album that is good is putting a lot of passion and suffering in.
Awesome. So another question: how do you compare U.S. crowds to European crowds?
Well, this is a question that comes up a bunch because I know there's a lot of Americans who don't understand the European phenomenon and vice versa. And the best way I could kind of describe this, and I think one way or another in the metal scene itself, I mean, you're always going to have that really kind of tight connectivity, that supportiveness. I've said it before, but I think heavy metal men are some of the most gentlemanly people out there, in that if there's any women in the crowd, they're very courteous to them, and they always try to make sure that they feel safe and comfortable, and that is one of the things I absolutely love about the heavy metal scene. Well, I'd say one thing that's just a difference between Europe and America in general is we're looking at different cultures. And in America, we have a culture in which our media and and our news sources it seems to me that they're constantly looking for a new sensation.
Right.
There's a couple sensations that have lasted. Like, I have no problem with rap, but I do find it amazing that rap is still on top of its game after having started in the 90s. I thought at some point it kind of get ostracized in the way that heavy metal did in the 90s a little bit. But America is really constantly looking for a new sensation, and looking for a new sensation, they often kind of downplay the previous sensation. I think you see it a little bit in the 70s when you had like a lot of disco and funk, and then in the 80s people were laughing at the bell bottoms and the afros and the funky beats.
Right.
The 80s And in the 80s you start to see this emerging hard rock and metal scene, and then in the 90s it gets downplayed for this new grunge and this new alternative scene. And then we get to the 2000s, and the grunge and the alternative scene isn't so much, and now we're starting to get into more of it's kind of more of like a pop fusion, in which pop is mixing with some country, it's mixing with some rap, it's mixing with a little bit of hard rock, but kind of downplaying what was there. So what I see in America is I do see there's a lot of this kind of new sensation chasing, whereas in the European crowd, the music isn't necessarily, it's not sensationalized in quite the same way. I've noticed that with many fans in Europe, they could go to a Taylor Swift concert, they could go to a U2 concert, and they could go to an Exodus concert all in the same week, and they don't have any identity crisis about what they're doing or how they fit in. They're going there to enjoy the arts, they're going there to enjoy the experience, they're there to enjoy what the bands have to offer, and it's not quite this idea that they're trying to chase this new sensation or hold on to this like past sensation, as much as just enjoy music for the artistic release that it is. And so I think that's the biggest thing I see, is that you just have cultures approaching the musical live experience in a different way.
There you go. What's your best gig and what's your worst gig?
Oh man.
Right.
Well, honestly, over 10 years, there's been quite a few phenomenal gigs and opportunities. So, yeah, I guess I could definitely say one that stuck out for me was early when I was in the band, and we played in Jakarta, Indonesia. I've never been to Indonesia before. I've never been to Jakarta before.
Nice.
Yeah, and I to be honest, it was really my first interaction with a completely different culture. And it was the last day of the tour. We were playing an outdoor event, and it was like a full moon, and it's hard to describe, but it felt religious. You know what I mean? Like, I'm looking out to the crowd, and there's just this incredible spirituality to these Jakartans and these Indonesians who are here enjoying this metal show, and it's like I said, there's no other way to describe it other than it felt somewhere between spiritual and religious, the way that everybody was in it so purely and so enjoyably.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and it really it's to this day, obviously, it still stands out. I won't be telling the story, but for me, that was like the best type of culture shock I think I could have ever had in my life. Was experiencing that experience in that place and in that time.
Wow.
Yeah. As far as a bad gig, I really say there really isn't bad gigs. There's just some that are a little bit more challenging, and I'd say the ones that have been more challenging were challenging simply because I was under the weather. And when you're on tour, I mean, you're exposed to a lot of people. You're on a bus with 12 people.
Yeah.
You're going through different climates, and you're going through different places. And I think everybody in our band is very grateful for what we do, and we really want to try to always give our best, always give a good, positive, uplifting performance. And when you're feeling like shit, it's you want to put on a smile, you want to do your best, but it could be very challenging.
Any message you want to send your fans, Death Angel fans? Something you want to tell our listeners?
one thing I always want to emphasize is, man, the life we live and what we get to do is absolutely a privilege. We don't take it for granted. It's only possible because of the fans and the people who have come out, support and encouraged us and allowed us to live this lifestyle. So I really want to thank everybody and anyone who's ever been there, ever supported us, or has any passion for this music. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Damien. I appreciate your time. Thank you for making time, and keep rocking.
Right on, man. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you guys for listening to our interview with Damien of Death Angel. And of course, thank you going out to Damien. Thank you for subscribing to our YouTube channel. Download our podcast, That Metal Interview Podcast, on Google Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and wherever you might find our podcast. So thank you guys. Thank you for following us on social media. Thank you for following us. And thank you guys for rocking out with us. jrocksmetalzone.com. And don't forget to keep it metal.
That Metal Interview.